me up high, you spread my
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah Muhammad ibn Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another session from the Ramadan Recollections. Each night we're going to be delving into moments of the past, of our beautiful past, individuals from our past that inspired and gave victory to Islam as we know it today. On this blessed second segment of this series, this Ramadan 1445, we're going to be traveling back to the third of Ramadan, and it's a very significant topic and a significant event that took place. That event on the 3rd of Ramadan many years ago, Allahu Akbar, was a moment which shocked the world with the demise of a lady in Islam, the most senior, the Sayyidah, the leader of all the women of the entire world, who we know as Hazrat Fatimah al-Batul al-Zahra, passed away on the 3rd of Ramadan. Two opinions exist with her demise. It was either 33 days before that Ramadan, or it's going to be on the 3rd of Ramadan itself. But whatever, the Ummah has been constantly remembering the 3rd of Ramadan as a day that we lost the Sayyidah of all the Nisa, the women of this world. Radiyallahu ta'ala anha wa ardaha. What can be said, and what a beautiful topic it is. What a hard topic it is. For us to speak, what do we include? Of her beauty, her excellence, her beautiful character that she took from her blessed father, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. What can we leave out in this short time? It's truly a very hard task. But nonetheless we try. We remember Lady Fatima al-Batul al-Zahra radiyallahu ta'ala anha wa ardaha on the 3rd of Ramadan when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took her back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ash-shay idha fuqida gharifa. As the Arabs have a saying, that when a thing is lost, you appreciate them. And it is on her demise that we remember now her life. And her life was one which inspired. Allahu Akbar. What can we say about her blessed household, which would indicate who she was? What can we say about her father? She's got the best father that anybody could have in this world, the beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What could we say about her mother, Khadijatul Kubra, the great lady in Islam and the great woman, the wife of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What are we going to say about the husband, Ali Kadramallahu Wajha, the great one, the Madinatul Ilm, Ali Babuhu, the door to the citadel of knowledge, the Sayyidina Ali Kadramallahu Wajha? And then what are we going to say about the blessed sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, Sayyidah Shababi Ahlul Jannah? Those are the two sons that are going to be the leader of all the youth inside of Jannah. What can we say about the blessed household? But nonetheless, we see that it was the 20th of Jamad al-Ukhra. It was almost 5 years before the Prophet ﷺ received revelation, is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the household of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ with his blessed daughter. And Allahu Akbar, what a beautiful day that was. It was a day of Friday when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the household with Fatima al-Zahra. Her beautiful name was chosen by her father. The Prophet ﷺ chose Fatima because the hellfire would be taken away from her and all those who followed her and loved her. And may Allah count us amongst them, inshallah. Her other names are going to be At-Tahira, a nickname, the pure one. Al-Mubashira, the one who's the one of Mubarakah. The Mubarakah is the one full of barakah and blessings. You're going to see her name is Abiha, as her father chose to call her, and that's a peculiar name if you look. The mother of her father. The Prophet ﷺ would always call her, in her affection, she was like a mother to the Prophet ﷺ, in affection, in closeness, Allahu Akbar. And we know the beautiful famous title is going to be Az-Zahra, because she's a rose of my Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And why wouldn't she be? When we read about her life, you're going to see that she was a rose, not like any other rose, more special than any other rose you've seen, more beautiful, more exquisite than all the roses of the entire world. Radiyallahu ta'ala anha. And we have the famous name Al-Batul, because of her intense devotion to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahu Akbar, she led a life that was absolutely beautiful, full of piety, full of protection of her, so that nobody ajnabi can see even her face. This is the way she led the entire life. Devoted daughter, devoted wife to Sayyidina Ali, devoted mother, a devoted woman of the nation. This is how she led her life. Allahu Akbar. She was the one who, in her youth, 5 years before Nubuwwat, that she's going to be experiencing the good times. And we speak about the good times in the sense that her mother was there, her father sallallahu alaihi wasallam are there, the sisters are there, and all in all, this was a time of peace. And then came the day when Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam received revelation, and things turned inside Makkah. And the attacks on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam started to step up, all because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was calling towards one Allah, to abandon the worship of idols that were prevalent inside Makkah and Arabia at that time. Hazrat Fatimah, being the beautiful daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had to endure seeing her father being the revered, the most beloved in the whole community, the one respected in the community, to being the one who was almost being attacked from every angle from the kuffar of Makkah inside. And what a ordeal that she must have seen to see her father like that. It is mentioned in the books of ahadith that on one of the occasions the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying salah next to the Ka'batullah. He went into sajda, and at that time one by the name of Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt, the cursed one, he was the leader from amongst the tribes of Quraysh, and he had taken some of the entrails or the intestines and the stomach entrails from a camel, and he threw it onto the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now for us that brings tears to our eyes. How can we endure that kind of a manzar and that scene? Everybody stepped back. Nobody wanted to step forward against the ru'asa of Quraysh. But it was one young girl at that time, Hazrat Fatimah al-Batul al-Zahra, that she went, and she was the one who was removing all of the entrails from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And here the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam raises his head and he begins to almost call out the names of the Quraysh leaders that were causing pain to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, "Oh Fatima, don't worry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of protectors." And lo and behold, not so far down the line, you're going to see in the Battle of Badr, each one that was named that day, including this Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt, was destroyed inside of that. They were perished inside of the Battle of Badr. But Fatima al-Batul al-Zahra had to witness that. Allahu Akbar. We see that there's certain individuals that were enemies in Islam, like the likes of Abu Sufyan that come about, like the likes of Abu Jahl. But now you might ask the question, when you have somebody like Abu Sufyan, who was constantly targeting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though he was a Qurayshi, even though he was from the clan of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but yet he would attack the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in those early days. But yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala later on gave him Iman and gave him Islam. Whereas there's others inside of the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like Abu Jahl, like Abu Lahab, and they were not given Iman. You have to remember there's a significance to that. And the ulama say, mention it down and pinpoint it to one point in the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the days, Abu Jahl, who was a mighty warrior and a formidable warrior, but he was an enemy of Islam, on one of the days, because of his anger against the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he being a grown-up man, he attacked and slapped the beloved daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam across her face. So she came crying as anybody would to the father. She goes to the Prophet ﷺ and complains to her father. The Prophet ﷺ's heart was broken at that time, that just because of my message they're doing this to my daughter. So he sends his daughter, he says, go to none other than Abu Sufyan, who's a leader, and tell him that you being the leader, how can you afford to allow this injustice being done against a little girl from your own community? So she goes to Abu Sufyan, and Abu Sufyan, his courage, he went really far, and he felt that sorrow for this little girl. How could this grown man hit a little girl? And so he goes to this Abu Jahl with Fatimah al-Batul al-Zahra, and he takes a hand of Fatima and he slaps the face of Abu Jahl, and he says to Fatima, he says, is that it? Have you got your revenge? And so she smiles and she walks away back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at the scene. She goes back to her Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, did you get what you wanted with Abu Sufyan? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam knows that he got the answer that he wanted, and Fatima got her revenge, to the point that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a dua for Abu Sufyan. And it is because of this karam and the goodness that he showed to his daughter Fatima that Abu Sufyan later on, you see at the time of Fath Makkah, that he was granted with Iman. Allahu Akbar. What about those people who show kindness to the Ahl Bayt? What will be in store for them? Allahu Akbar. May Allah give us a portion of that. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in a beautiful hadith, Ahabba ahla bayti ilayya Fatima radiyallahu ta'ala anha wa ardaha. The most beloved to me out of all my household is my beloved Fatima. Whoever gets her angry has made me angry. He says, Fatima bid'atun minni. He says in another hadith, he says, Fatima is a piece of me. She's a portion of me. Anybody who messes with her is messing with me. Anybody who upsets her is upsetting me. This is the beautiful love they had. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ says there was a malak, an angel who came, who took permission from his Lord to come and visit me, just to tell me, Anna Fatima, Sayyidah Nisa'i Ummati, that indeed your daughter Fatima is going to be the leader of all of the women of the entire world, of this last nation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What kind of love did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had? She endured all these hardships for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever she would come in her later days to the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to any majlis, he would rise from his place and he would give the place to her. He would stand in front of everybody and he would kiss her forehead. And she would also, when he would come into her majlis, she would stand up and she would give her seat to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is a love that was between them two. Allahu Akbar. In fact, at the time when the Prophet when Hazrat Fatima became of age, everybody inside of Makkah wanted to marry her because of her beauty and her piety more than anything else. There was not a woman inside of Makkah that can surpass her beautiful shyness, her bashfulness, her piety, and her God consciousness. And so Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq asked for a hand in marriage, but the Prophet ﷺ refused. Hazrat Umar the Great, Abu Khattab radiallahu anhu, asked for the hand in marriage, but he refused. And then he says, I only get my daughters married ba'da wahi min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I only get my daughters married when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the hukm and the order from the skies. So he waited. Now comes the turn of the great one who's going to be chosen by Allah, Sayyidina Ali karramallahu wajha. But now look at the story, and it's a beautiful story for us to take away today. Because when he wants to propose, he says, how am I going to build up the courage to go and ask for the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And so he asks the Sahibain, Abu Bakr Siddiq and Hazrat Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, should I go and ask? They said, yeah, definitely. You're the loved one in the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You ask and you will definitely get your answer. And so he goes into the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to ask for the hand of the daughter. But when he sees the Prophet ﷺ, his tongue freezes. He can't say it. He can't build the courage up to ask for the hand of the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. At this moment, the Prophet ﷺ looks, he says, Ya Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardahu, maybe you have come to ask for my daughter Fatimah, radiyallahu ta'ala, for her hand in marriage. And here he smiles and he says, yes, I have. And this is the point where the father would say, yes, no problem, I agree, I'm happy with this. But instead the Prophet ﷺ says, Insha'Allah. So Hazrat Ali doesn't want to ask any more questions, and so he just walks away. He goes out and he meets the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr Siddiq, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab. He says, see, I told you that I shouldn't have asked because I've been refused. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu says, just remind me, what did the Prophet ﷺ exactly say? What's his exact words? And so Ali radiallahu anhu says, he said, Insha'Allah. Hazrat Ali says, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu says to Sayyidina Ali, he said, do you not know the Insha'Allahs of the Prophet ﷺ is a yes? He says, glad tidings for you, you'll get what you're waiting for. But the Prophet ﷺ said it for altogether another reason. He was waiting for wahi from the sky, but at the same time he went straight to the house of the Fatimah al-Batul al-Zahra and he asked her for her permission. Allahu Akbar. May Allah give us this kind of adab with our daughters and with the women folk of this ummah, that he went, even though he knows that when the wahi comes, he can say that Allah give you permission, but he asked her for her permission, that this proposal has come from Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu ta'ala an. And here we see that Hazrat Fatima was given that he came from the sky, she agreed, and the date was set. The Prophet ﷺ went into the masjid. He had a few dates. He had some water that was infused or mixed with honey, and he invited everybody. He did the khutbah, and he said, for 400 silver coins that we give as mahr, which will be known as Mahr Fatimi, is what Ali radiallahu anhu is going to give. And the Prophet ﷺ gave all of the people inside the masjid partake from this dried dates and this drink that was made from honey. Now the Prophet ﷺ says to Ali and to Fatima, today I marry you. And he does the Masum khutbah, which we all hear in the khutbahs that we do, after praising Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, sending salutations upon them. We mentioned the verses of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about taqwa and spouses, and thereafter the Prophet ﷺ says that the ijab and qubul, and here the nikah takes place. It's after a month or a year where the rukhsat is going to take place. And so Ali radiallahu anhu says to Hazrat Salman al-Farsi that you have a standing with the Prophet ﷺ. Let's roll this out. Let's speed this up now. We've been married for over a month or a year, as according to the different opinions, and now it's time for the rukhsati, time for now her to enter into my house. And so Sayyidina Salman al-Farsi goes to the Prophet ﷺ, and here the Prophet ﷺ arranges for Asma bint Unais and other women from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ to prepare the bride to be taken to the husband's house. So they dress her, adorn her as a bride should be. Now the Prophet ﷺ gets Ali radiallahu anhu to come on his camel to the house of the Prophet ﷺ to pick up in this sha'an, in this beautiful manner, that to take the Prophet ﷺ's daughter. The Prophet ﷺ takes the hand of Fatima by the hand and he places it in the hand of Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. What a beautiful manzar that would have been to be invited to that moment. Allahu Akbar. And the Prophet ﷺ says to his daughter, today I give your hand in the hand of the most beloved one from my family. Allahu Akbar. And here the union takes place. And from there we see that many beautiful, the household will give you the Imams, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Muhassan, and all of the beautiful progeny of the Prophet ﷺ from them. May Allah be pleased with them. Fatima radiallahu al-Batul al-Zahra led a beautiful life, one where no ajnabi man male saw her all the way through her life. And it was at that time and that moment when the Prophet ﷺ was about to leave this world. Fatima comes to visit the father. And at that time, the Prophet ﷺ sits her on the right side of the Prophet ﷺ. And then he calls her close to him. And he says something, whispers inside of her ear. And she begins to cry. And then he whispers another thing into her ear. And then she begins to smile. And this was a secret that she took all the way until the Prophet ﷺ left this world. Aisha radiallahu anha would probe her. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? And you don't forget, Hazrat Aisha was, whilst the Prophet ﷺ was in marriage to Hazrat Khadija al-Kubra, he didn't marry any other woman. But later on, even after the demise of Khadija radiallahu anha wa ardaha, Hazrat Aisha says, I was jealous of no woman ever except Khadija al-Kubra, because of how the Prophet ﷺ would always speak about her with great loftiness and great affection and love. And the other one that I was always envious of was this one, who they call Fatima al-Batul al-Zahra, because of the closeness. As Aisha in a beautiful narration says, ما رأيت أحدا أشبه كلاما وحديثا برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من فاطمة. I've never seen anyone more resembling in word and physical appearance than Fatima to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She looked exactly like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was beautiful like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She had an aura and she had a beautiful glow to her like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we know as nur. This is the way after the demise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now she told Hazrat Aisha what was the thing that made her cry and what was the thing that made her smile. The Prophet ﷺ had told her on the first one that I am soon to leave this world. And as Fatima al-Batul al-Zahra began to cry. And then the Prophet ﷺ gave happiness. He says, but don't worry, out of my family you're going to be the first one to follow me and meet me. You're going to die soon after. And she began to smile. If we were told that we were about to die, that would upset us even more. But she wanted to be with her beloved. Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. A person will be with the one who they love. And she truly had a love for her father, and no doubt she's going to be with her father. And this is exactly what happened. It was the 3rd of Ramadan when she came into the house, and it was in Ramadan. And she told her Asma bint Umais that I'm just going into my room where I worship and I'm going to be praying. But Asma radiallahu anha didn't hear the takbirs coming from within in the room of ibadah of Hazrat Fatima. And she knew at that moment that Fatima was no longer amongst them. And so she runs to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, and she says that Fatima has left this world, breaking the heart of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu forever. They will never be the same. But Ali radiallahu says, he goes, my 2 sons will be coming home. Fatima would always have the iftar ready for them when they came to the house after Maghrib. And so let them have their food first before you tell them of this sad news, before I come to the house. Asma prepared the food. They came into the house. They saw the food being prepared. The food was prepared. They sat down to have this food. But they said, the food's here, but we do not have a single morsel in our mouth without our mother. Where is our mother? And at that time, these young boys were told the fateful news that Hazrat Fatima al-Batul al-Zahra had passed away. This was the tragic or the beautiful death that the Prophet ﷺ's daughter had. Allahu Akbar. The beloved Prophet ﷺ says that she led a beautiful life and a life that nobody saw her. She was buried by enveloped in the darkness of the night in Medina al-Munawwara. In fact, on the Day of Judgment, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Nada munadin min batnan al-arshi," that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is between the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, underneath it, a voice, a herald will call out on the Day of Judgment. Nakkisu ru'usakum wa gaddu absarakum. Lower your heads, all of the people, lower your heads, bow your eyes down in humility for the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hatta, until she passes over the bridge and enters into Jannatul Firdaus. Even on that day, Allah will protect her purity and will not let anybody see her. All the heads will be bowed unanimously for Lady Fatimah al-Batul al-Zahra. In fact, in another riwayah says, 70 angels, 70 hur'een from Jannah will accompany her over the bridge, and that's the status and the rank of Fatimah. These were a few snippets from that beautiful life. On the 3rd of Ramadan, remember that beautiful lady, the beautiful one that inspires our women to be how they are, the best that they can ever be, the role model for our women, the role model for our daughters, the role model for the entire nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the highest abode and rank to Fatima, the daughter of the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah make our daughters and our women of this ummah like Fatima al-Batul al-Zahra. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept these nights of Ramadan, and in our remembering the Ahl Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring about rectification to this ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll finish off with a beautiful poem. لي خمسة أطفي بها حر الوباء الحاطمة المصطفى المرتضى وبناهما والفاطمة. May Allah be pleased with them all. وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
High, you spread